A very good day to everyone. I'm Vishanthini Kanasan, and I'm currently working in Penang Hospital, and I did my PhD in Center for Global Sustainability Studies, University Science Malaysia. And today I'll be sharing with you the research that I've conducted for the past 3 years, entitled Mainstreaming Climate Resilience in Local Land Use Planning, Case Study in Malaysia Cities. So my research journey towards climate resilient cities will be presented in 4 stages. So let me share with you my research overview, starting with the research question, the big question: how can Malaysian cities mainstream climate resilience in land use planning? So the funnel approach was employed in the exploration of this research due to its similarity to a bird's eye scanning, the process before identifying the particular information about the research. Therefore, I used qualitative method to conduct this research. It implies interpretation as a philosophy and theoretical underpinning, with the main aim to develop a framework in enabling local government to adapt to climate change resilience within the context of local planning. So 2 important research principles were referred to for this research. As this research does not try to observe changes and looks into development of a phenomenon over a period of time from the time horizon perspective, it is accordingly considered as a cross-sectional study, and it is indeed a multidisciplinary study. In this case, the selection of an area of research that is compatible with my interests and strength as a researcher was very important to me. To focus and refocus to enhance the knowledge domain. Therefore, the subject area of interest for my research originated from my work experience in Malaysian local government and strong interest in environmental issues. As an example, if you look at it, from year 2015 and 2017, you are able to see the increase of flooding incidents in Penang. And the philosophy that actually encouraged me to look into the research was the Total Planning Doctrine of Malaysia, where a new approach to the planning and design which is expected to guide the physical planning system, focusing on sustainable development. And also the total planning and development policy that looks into relationship between man and relationship between man and its environment. So from there, I looked into the research aim, questions, and objectives. Local land use planning encompasses locality physical planning within the city parameters, which is significant in reflecting the local community's need. Hence, mainstreaming climate resilience into local land use planning addresses the demand and supply of space issue, as it is the key strategy to efficiently use limited resources amid climate changes. While most of the discourse in this disciplinary either focus on human having caused or influenced destruction on the global climate, I find that few studies recognize the role of an institution in reference to local government in addressing climate impact. However, these studies neither enriched the literature in mainstreaming climate resilience from a land use planning perspective and from the institution on local government cities, leading to a significant knowledge gap. The aim of this research is twofold, where the primary goal is the development of a framework to empower Malaysian local government to mainstream climate resilient initiative in the planning context, specifically local plan. The second aim is the understanding of the obstacles and issues experienced by Malaysian local government to mainstream climate resilient in the process of local land use planning. This research aims to bring light to 2 interdependent perspectives, which are the importance of the local context of a city, or I put it in a way, the character of the city, and institutional environment that is important for integrating climate resilient consideration in local land use planning process. The research questions are: what are the challenges or weaknesses of existing local plan process and governance? The second, why is it important and crucial for local government to mainstream resilience within the context of local plans? And the third, how local government can effectively mainstream climate resilient initiatives in local land use planning. And these 3 questions will actually answer or bring significance to the research objective whereby to identify the challenges, weaknesses of existing local land use planning process structure in mainstreaming climate resilience. A good case study approach would cause the research to be performed within a group of preliminary theories associated with the research focus. In this case, the pre-establishment of conceptualizing the situation is essential before the collection and analysis of the data. The importance of local context where planners require knowledge about climate change and local need, as not all impacts of climate change could be addressed through local land use planning process. The understanding of the character of the city by complying with planetary guardrails is very important to protect the local environment. The imperatives of the institutional environment for addressing planning and climate change elements are made by mainstreaming climate resilient initiative within the local land use planning process. The significance of mainstreaming is the seamless interconnection of local context of a city within the institutional environment, which ensures an updated all-around land use plan, which is very much related to sectoral coordination and capacity building. So, for my research mode was separated into two phases, namely the deductive acquirement of understanding by the researcher, which is me, and development of presumption based on literature review. 2 pilot interview findings in the initial phase was done. In the later phase, primary data was collected from the sessions of focus group discussions, semi-structured interviews, and document analysis, where the conclusion was obtained at the end of the research. Inductive reasoning commences with observation and measures to trace norms to create a hypothesis that may lead to establishment of assumptions of theories. This situation is formally known as a bottom-up approach. The research techniques that actually used to conduct my research. My research is a case study research, which is constantly known as the adaptable category of qualitative inquiry. Primarily exploratory and explanatory, the case study was employed to understand real problem issues in real life settings. I used triangulation as my research methodology, where for my primary data, I conducted 6 focus group discussions that had 45 participants. Each focus group discussion session took at the span of 1 to 2 hours, and then I had 15 semi-structured personal interviews, people right from middle management up to ministerial level. Whereas for secondary data, I looked into various records and documents, right from government records, including NGO records. I wanted to address 4 themes of my research. First was perception of climate resilience issues related to land use planning, mainstreaming climate resilience into land use planning of the local government. Third, sectoral coordination, basically institutionalizing it, and also for capacity building. I analyzed my data in terms of semi-structured interview and focus group discussion. And I'll start with my research question 1. What are the disadvantages, obstacles of the available local plan process, governance structure in mainstreaming climate resilience? As you can see, when I went into awareness of climate change impact on local communities, among planners, government officers, civil servants in a nutshell, you could see that 58% of the responses from the FGDs showed that planners lack understanding of predicted effects and susceptibility to climate change, and followed by they're actually quite unaware types of climate change and its impact on people. So these people who attended the FGD suggested 3 solutions: encourage participative planning, organizational cohesion, and availability of reliable data and information. Second was on who is responsible to address climate change impact in local land use planning. It was very surprising that all those who attended the focus group discussion informed that responsible organizations and institutions, regardless of level in government, should be held responsible to address climate change, and followed by establishing of empowering coordination within and outside of agencies. And agencies that are most affected by climate change should have a higher involvement in terms of institutionalizing the narratives of impact of climate change in local land use planning. It was also surprising to me that two sectors mostly affected by climate change shared by these people were actually on paddy production and fisheries. That is very important to food security. My second research question, many people don't seem to realize the local land use planning is the basis or foundation of planning of a city, planning of a town, or even planning of a rural area. Thus, integrating knowledge is very essential. As such, the narratives of the focus group discussion showed that 85% of those who attended it said that it is attaining credible real-time local information and participatory planning very much important together with proactive decision making. And how can actually local communities enable mainstreaming? So we are looking at a bottom-up approach. And you're looking at 100% of them agree the potential roles that can be performed by local communities or entrusted to them could bring the change in terms of encouraging and supporting local community initiatives. You need a balance where you need data, you need local culture, and also affordable local need to come together with institutional environment, where you need a proper base data from EIA, local plan, local government empowerment, and political will. This is similar for both sectoral coordination and capacity building. Whereas in capacity building, you're looking again, data-driven capacity building, and institutional memory is very much stressed over and over again to have effective and strong local capacity building and sectoral coordination. In my research, there were very clear 5 contributions. The first was the importance of mainstreaming climate resilience in local government, especially in cities. And it's related to how it was systematically presented and identified, where challenges were addressed according to localities, connected to where it provided awareness and understanding of the climate change impact, to institutionalizing it in the government sector, specifically to city local government. And it was linked to coming up with a conceptual framework that is very much bottom-up approach that can be practically accepted, adapted, and done at a local government level. And this framework was established especially in terms of mainstreaming an integrated approach from various disciplinary, various background in the government service. A successful local land use planning that can address climate resilience is very much held together by sectoral coordination and capacity building. But in order to have a very strong sectoral coordination and effective capacity building, we need to have a bottom-up approach, whereby on my left-hand side is the character of the city, where you use local knowledge, participative planning, and data information to bring all in together. And on my right-hand side would be knowledge sharing, governance, and institutional environment. These two coming together will actually give a very strong basis for a climate resilient local land use planning. As a civil servant, this particular framework can actually be used for other instances, not only for local land use planning. Example, if you are looking into economic development in a certain place, it is very much important to address local knowledge, having participative local gathering of data, and sharing of this knowledge in terms of governance, and you're creating an institutional environment. That's how when you bring this together, you incorporate capacity building, sectoral coordination, and you will be having intellectual memory being retained in the government institution. Let me share with you how Plan Malaysia actually mainstream climate resilience via sustainable development goals into the Malaysian Special Development context. If you look at it, from a Malaysian Special Development context, they have addressed mainstreaming climate resilience via NPP3 and UP2 and NRPP within SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. And then again, you're seeing how they mainstream climate resilience via spatial development context in Climate Action SDG 13. The other very clear successful mainstreaming by Plan Malaysia that was done was actually the New Urban Agenda. You're looking at Thrust 3, where environmentally sustainable and resilient urban development was very much the cruise of the planning research and guidelines for implementation actions. And in looking at an NPP3, they have 3 implementation actions. This is how they actually mainstreamed it into policies. Under Thrust 4, building the urban governance structure, they managed to incorporate training and capacity building for urban planners, meaning they are able to retain knowledge of climate from one group of officers into another group of officers. My framework was adopted in the Penang 2030 vision planning, where the state government came up with investing in the built environment to improve resilience, and it was incorporated in a strategic initiative D1, where the policies has to be mainstream according to balanced development through effective spatial planning. And D1 was related to D4, where implement climate change in adaptation plans. Again, you are seeing the relation of planning in empowering people to strengthen civic participation. If you go back into the framework that I shared with you just now, you will see the character of the city brings a lot of significance into a successful local land use planning. The government agency needs to be more open to accepting local memory, in accepting ideas, because as government officers change, but local people in that particular area will not change, and their experience and their knowledge in certain area will help and benefit the government, especially in climate-based decisions in spatial planning. I would like to end my presentation with sharing with you the strong significance of the word resilience. The oak fought the wind and was broken, but the willow bent when it was must and survived, meaning that climate change is not something new, but in order to be resilient to climate change, we should be able to bend and to adapt to the changes. And as civil servants, it's very much important that we mainstream these changes via capacity building and sectoral coordination by including input by participative planning for a successful mainstreaming of climate resilience in local land use planning. Thank you.